Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship. It's ticked over to qualifying. So it's a brand new season, and once again we're kicking the season off at the Goiania circuit. There's a few less cars out there this time than what there was last season, where there was, I think it was about 25 cars, I believe, for the season opener in Season 2. Only got, I think, 10 or 11 out there tonight, but hopefully we do see a couple more drivers obviously show up. Obviously, maybe not tonight, but hopefully in the future rounds. See, being Easter Monday, probably got a few people away on holiday and such, but anyway, brand new season. Brand new hopes for a lot of these drivers to nick a win and hopefully see someone contend Brenton Foley for the championship. His nemesis from Season 2 hasn't registered, and obviously was missing from the Season 2 finale. So Brenton Foley at this stage probably, or definitely the favourite. Just a few things to go over for this season opener in Season 3. No drivers have weight for this first round. It was just in case new drivers come along, and it would just be an even playing field, and we'd be able to easily, or it would make it easier to set weight for the drivers if everyone's got the same amount of weight. And obviously we've seen the quicker drivers from last season, if we see how they compare to any new drivers, but at the moment no new drivers. But I've got Brownie now out there on a timed lap, so we'll just follow him around and see how he goes. A little bit of a drift there through turn 1. Turns in nice and early there for turn 3. Coming up to the Sector 1 split, 35.6. Not the best, but not the worst either. Once again, just a reminder, or for those that are watching for the first time, qualifying in these cars, it's a one-lap shootout. So you don't want to muck it up. You don't want to bin it on your outlap and press escape. That means the qualifying session's still over. But Brownie currently purple in the first sector, 3/10 faster than Wayne Whitmore. Whitmore's put in a 33.6 in the middle sector. Let's see what Brownie does in his middle split. 34.0. So advantage Whitmore for now. We'll just try and cut to him before he crosses the start-finish line. 32.8, which is a very solid lap time in the Scuderia Italia / Flat Spot Racing Honda. Brownie goes in P2 with a 33.5. And got Termo out there, purple in the first split. He's in his Irwin Tools Racing entry. Was running all his cars were Castrol cars last season. Now he's running the Irwin entry, 1.2 up in the middle split. So this is looking like it's going to be a 31 if he gets these final couple corners right. It's pretty much just that one corner, even though there's it does count as two. The two apexes, it is pretty much one corner. He's had a nice run through there. 31.6, that's a very handy lap time. You did see Wayne Whitmore, he set a 31.5 in practice. So his first split is actually 1.2 down. And that's pretty much the gap. So throughout the middle and final sector, Termo and Whitmore pretty much shared their times. But that first split, Wayne Whitmore obviously had an error. Probably, if I had to guess, at turn 1. And Glenn Miles, he sets a 34.3. And Brian Walsh 34.5. Both those guys set 33s actually in practice, so they'll be a little bit disappointed not to get their laps quite together. At the moment, Cracker, the only one out there on a time lap. Hasn't been the greatest lap in the world, but it's not the worst either. Probably seen him pop up around Brownie. Here he is, 1/10 away from Brownie, but 1.9 off the lead. You can see it's Cracker straight back to the pits, and as you can see, just the edge of the pits there's FCR Motorsport, formerly Farcanel Racing, and they've changed their colours this season. They were once paisley and black, and then last season they were orange and blue, or blue and orange, and now they've pretty much gone for the old, I think it's early to mid 2000 Yamaha Galwa MotoGP of Valentino Rossi fame liveries. So just having a look now, we've got Steve Bulge in the Martini liveried car, Martini Racing Team, or in this case Gravel Rash Racing. So he's kept with the Renault, but got a brand new paint scheme for that one. Hasn't had the greatest practice session, Steve Bolger, sort of in the middle of the pack. We have seen throughout these Monday night series that he has been quite handy, so never know, he might turn it on here in qualifying in the race and find a bit of time and move up. Currently out there on an out lap. In fact, we've got Mike Coulson out there on a lap, so we'll just cut to him. He's just crossed the line. He's done a 32.9. That moves him up to third place. And he showed some very nice pace towards the end of last season in a couple of the rounds, as did Gary Neville, who's not here tonight. But, Steve Bolger now about to start a lap. In fact, we'll ride on board Mr. Bolger, sitting in the passenger seat. You're going to be coming up to turn 1. You want to be braking probably about 105, 102 metres. Down to third gear. A little bit oversteer there. A little bit hesitant on the throttle as well. Mid corner. Probably a little bit of time in that, but still not too bad through turn 1 and 2. Coming to turn 3, a little kink here. That's flat out. Braking about 100 metres. Down to second. You can take it in third, but second, generally the fast way through turn 4 here. Very long. Coming up to the, there it is, first split. Very handy first split for Steve Bolger. Braking about 70 metres. Next corner, down to second. That's a nice run for this left-hander. Flat through this little gentle right-hand corner. And you want to brake for the chicane right there, yep. About 80 metres, down to second. Use a bit of the sausage curve. Ooh, he's gone a little bit too quickly then. It's forced him too far to the right, and it's caused him to get out of the throttle. And yeah, there we go. That's dropped half a second, probably just from that actually, because the rest of the sector was okay. Brake about 100 for the final couple of turns, down to second gear. On the power fairly early there. Flat through the final part, and flat all the way to the start-finish line. This will probably put him P2 at least. Hits the limiter and pretty much matched Termo in the final sector there. So he's half a second down. Not bad there from Steve Bolger. That little mistake in the middle sector costing him a little bit, but still, he's given himself a good chance in the race. And now I've got the FCR Motorsport cars out there. Got Brendon Ross, Ricky Slick and Brenton Foley out there. Ricky Slick, a full-time driver with FCR Motorsport now. And we've just seen Steve Bolger go out there and do that, so we'll right on board Brenton Foley. As you can see on the right-hand side there, on Reef, showing the champion for last season, down to third gear into turn 1. Ooh, he's drifted it a little bit there. That would have cost him a little bit of time. So not the greatest run through first split, but we'll see how he goes. He hasn't been comfortable in practice, but we have seen in practice where he's been a little bit off the pace and then faster once qualifying rolls around. Another unconventional there, and hanging on the limiter, but he's still up by half a tenth. Once again, sitting on the limiter. Nice run. And through, I think it's turn 7 there. Hits the limiter once again, using all the revs and more. Looks very late for the chicane. Will he get the nose in? Ooh, just. Doesn't run wide like Bolger, so it should be okay through here. Much better exit. still up. He's lost a little bit of time, but he's still up. So Whitmore, Termo, and Foley very close in the middle sector. And once again, a little bit late, shifting up. Still a very nice run through the final sector. It's going to be very, very close between himself and Termo. And he's nicked it. In fact, his final sector is quite good. 3/10 up. Just see Ricky Slick out there on a lap in that rust bucket with the Confederate flag on his helmet and on the window. Let's see how he's going on this lap. He's going to set, looks like a 132.6. And that moves him up to, well, to momentarily was fourth, but down to fifth as Brendon Ross jumps up to P3 in the end, but he was 6/10 off his now teammate Brenton Foley. So, just to recap, qualifying, Brenton Foley, he kicks off his championship defence the best possible way with pole position for race 1 with a 31.352. Then we got Termo in P2, Brendon Ross P3, Steve Bolger P4, Ricky Slick in P5, Wayne Whitmore P6, Mike Coulston P7, Brownie P8, Cracker P9, and Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh the final two. I'm pretty sure, going by order, everybody but Steve Bolger that is in, well, from a lot of, well, I was just going to say that a lot of the guys that are in a team are pretty much line astern for a lot of the field, except for Steve Bolger. Sort of throws it out a little bit, and obviously Termo, so both those guys only one car teams, but everyone is in a team pretty much all together. But anyway, we'll just take a short break as I've got to conduct the driver's briefing, but we shall be back shortly. Automobilista Australia, and for the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship, drivers briefing has been conducted, and still got about 5 minutes left, so I might as well just go over a little bit of information. As you can see on your screen, this is the Goiania. Well, we are at Goiania. Got 3.8. Well, yes, 3.835 kilometers, 13 turns. The format has all the touring car races, 2 races. Second race is reverse grid, provided, of course, that a driver finishes. If the driver doesn't finish, they start in order of where they failed to finish. Races 25 minutes long, and then once time expires and the leader crosses the start-finish line, that will then proceed to be the final lap of the race. And just comparing a bit of data from last season, where we had James Owen, who was Brenton Foley's championship protagonist for much of the season. He won the first race and set a fastest lap in race 1 of a 1 minute 31.019. I do believe the fastest overall lap time was a 29.9 or 29.8 by Johnny in the first or second race. Yes, in the first round of the first season. I do believe we saw a 29. In the second race, we had Matt Williams and Scott Morrill battle it out right at the end last season. So hopefully we get a similar battle in both races, hopefully this evening. Both of them having multiple dives and re-overtakes throughout. And comparing qualifying times, Brendon Ross actually set pole position with a 31.365, and it was about not even half a tenth. He was a thousandth faster than James Owen with a 31.378. Baker with a 31.515, and then Reece Gardner with a 31.833. So lap times are around about the same, a tad slower, but around about the same at the front. And I'm just going to try and find actually. Just want to sort something out on live races. Obviously, Brendon Ross had weight, as did James Owen. Both of them had 20 kilos. Reece Gardner had 100 kilos at that stage. But also, looking at Wayne Whitmore, he set a 1 minute 32.0. So that's another one to compare. And Cracker set a 32.1. So I'm just going to try and bring up qualifying results. So just give me a moment. I do apologise, but where are we? Yep, so Whitmore this time out set a 32.8, so it's actually 8 tenths slower. I don't think the track's as rubbered up. We did have, I think, 25 drivers. I'll just actually double check. Yeah, we had, for qualifying, we had 23 drivers, so obviously that's a lot of rubber going down in practice. For last season, and I'm pretty sure the track would have been almost max rubber by the time they started qualifying. So that's why times would be a little bit quicker. That said, though, Brenton Foley, he didn't have weight this time around. Last season he had 85 kilos, and I do believe he made a mistake, but he set a 135.1, so a bit of an improvement from him. Another one that improved, Glenn Miles. Last season, he set a 37.2 in qualifying. This time out, he set a 1 minute 34.3. So that's a good 3-second improvement. And obviously, he could have been faster as well. So it's good to see. As you can see, and here we've ticked over to the race session. So I'll just sort out the HUD. As the drivers form up onto the grid. Still got about 20 or so seconds. So as you can see, drivers forming up onto the grid, and FCR dominating. Obviously the blue and fluorescent yellow / green, like his colour. Very, very easy to spot. It's good to see we've got a couple teams sort of forming up and obviously having drivers band together and help each other and create not only a bit of teamwork but a bit of banter as well. Anyway, we are underway with the formation lap for the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship for Season 3. And it will be Brenton Foley, our Seasons 1 and 2 champion. As you can see, number 1 on his car. He will lead us away with Termo, who was very quick towards the end of last season, will join alongside him at the front. Brendon Ross will start third. He's another one to look out for. He's been very sporadic in this series over the past 2 seasons, but has been a little bit more consistent of late. So he's another one to look out for. Steve Bolger, another one inconsistent, but does show flashes of speed. And then we've got the Southern sensation of Ricky Slick, being a full-time driver, I believe, in that rust bucket / piece of shit for FCR Motorsport Team Scrouse. With Matt Williams taking a back step. Behind them it is the 2 flat spot racing / Scuderia Alitalia cars of Wayne Whitmore in P6. He could have improved in qualifying, so he's one to look out for in the race. Was quite quick in practice. And Mike Coulston in 7th again. I think he's got a little bit more pace in him than what he showed in qualifying. And then we've got Brownie and Cracker in 8th and 9th for the Cracker Racing team. Glenn Miles and Ryan Walsh in the Playboy Racing Ford Focuses again. They've much improved from last season. For those that haven't seen the touring car series before, the safety car will pull into the pits, but the race will not go green. It is a rolling start. The race will not go green, or the race will be called green, but the drivers will not accelerate away until the leader crosses the start-finish line. Once he obviously gets to the start-finish line, he then accelerates away, and away we go racing. Cars behind cannot overtake before the start-finish line, otherwise they will be penalised. It was slightly different. We've obviously had to make alterations throughout the couple seasons to make sure we don't have drivers running into each other and causing incidents, and this has been the most foolproof way. So Brenton Foley about to get Season 3 underway. Termo alongside, Brendon Ross right behind, and away we go for Season 3 Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship. They've all remained pretty much line astern, but now Foley moves to the outside. Looks like Ross has got a decent run on Termo. And in fact, Termo trying to hold on around the outside, but Brendon Ross will make it FCR Motorsport 1-2. But Termo is close enough to have a look as they go through turn 3. Decides better of it. And no accident into turn 4 this time around, thankfully. Foley leads us away. So we've got Brownie and I think it's Coulston side by side there. Brownie moves up into P7. Coulston down to P8. And a bit of a lock up there from Steve Bolger, and that's allowed Wayne Whitmore to have a look. But for now, Steve Bolger will hold on to P5, but he's dropped down a spot. It looks like Ricky Slick. Ricky Slick, in fact, has got past Termo, so Termo's dropped a couple spots now behind FCR Motorsport and FCR Motorsport Team Scrouse cars of Ross and Slick. And is falling into the clutches now of Steve Bolger, who's also got Wayne Whitmore right behind him. See a number of drivers, including Termo, locking up into that final corner. Right on board, Steve Bolger in the slipstream. So the front two, in fact, Ross is right behind Brenton Foley. The front two have sort of broken away from Ricky Slick. And I wonder, Brendon Ross is going to have a look at Brenton Foley into turn 1. Brakes late, little bit of a locker. Foley hangs it around the outside. But Both FCR drivers giving each other space, still side by side, but Foley ahead by a hair at this stage, but Ross will have the inside to turn 4. Once again, teammate giving him space, but Foley will now have the inside, this left-hander, and that's allowed Ricky Slick to close in, but Brenton Foley holds on for now. But that front pack that was 1.1 seconds in front of Ricky Slick at the start of that, it's now, was half a second, it's now pretty much nothing, and Termo also right there. We've had Wayne Whitmore jump up in front of Steve Bolger, so we'll just cut to a replay and try and see where that happened. Looks like into turn 1 there. No, turn 2, so it looks like Bolger just in too deep. A bit wide, and that allowed Whitmore past. Oh, and we've seen Brendon Ross has made a mistake somewhere, because Brenton Foley's now 1.2 in the lead, and he's got a very angry Ricky Slick and Termo right behind. Ricky Slick right behind him in the slipstream, and Termo right behind him. Ricky Slick having a look at Brendon Ross into turn 1. Goes late. It's going to be carbon copy between FCR cars, except this time it's Ross on the outside, but Slick gets it done, and Termo, he's going to try and be a bit creative and use that overtake. Oh, there is contact, so looks like I think Termo is a little bit too late on the brakes. He had Brendon Ross there right in front of him. Brendon Ross had already sort of got on the grass and lost it, and Termo probably should have got on the brake a little bit earlier, but a little bit of contact, and they both go around, so that's Termo now down to 10th, and Brendon Ross now down to 8th. Both of them with a little bit of damage, but hopefully it shouldn't damage them too badly. We've got Mike Coulston having an all-out battle between the two Cracker Racing cars, a little bit of contact into the chicane, and that sent Coulston around, well, half around. And Cracker was going to take advantage, but he's lifted out of it and allowed Mike Coulston through. They're battling now for P5 after Termo and Ross dropping through the field. Brenton Foley now 2.3 seconds over Ricky Slick. Crosses the line 31-2. That would have put him on pole. He's got 2.4 seconds over Ricky Slick, who set a 31-8. Wayne Whitmore in third position. A little bit of a lock up there into turn 1. He's ran wide a little bit. He's 1.4 behind Ricky Slick. Was 1 second between himself and Bolger, but I reckon that's just cut down a little bit, and these guys have 3.9 over Mike Coulston, who's got Cracker all over the back of him. Brownie's just dropped off the back of these two. Coulston a little bit wide in the entry there, but Cracker not quite close enough to capitalise. Termo has got past Glenn Miles, looking at live timing there. Coulston in the narrower line into it's turn 7 there. Once again, he's gone defensive into the chicane a little bit. It's just allowing Cracker to stick around, but Cracker's outbroke himself and gets it a little bit sideways, but Coulston hasn't had a great run through the chicane himself. So it's pretty much remained the same between these two. Behind them, Brendon Ross passed Brown in the exit of the chicane, so let's right on board here on the replay and have a look and see what happened. Yeah, Brownie just outbroke himself there, and then Ross getting on the switchback. Ross 31.7, half a second slower than Brenton Foley, but Ross didn't have to deal, or Foley, I should say, didn't have to deal with getting past anybody. Cracker and Coulston continued to duke it out, and in front of them, Steve Bolger, Wayne Whitmore, also now engaged in a bit of a battle, so that gap's come down. just running away with it. Ricky Slick doing a decent job there in P2. I think the big battle now is going to be between, or for the final spot on the podium, between Whitmore, Bolger, and then it'll be interesting to see, 17.5 minutes plus that extra lap remaining. It'll be interesting to see if Brendon Ross can carve his way through the field and get himself, or give himself a chance to get back onto the podium. I think he is a chance for the title, or at least he should think himself as one, but he's just got to cut out little mistakes and errors. And if he hadn't run on the grass there, he probably wouldn't have been run into the back of. Either way, just a little bit of a racing incident, but it's not giving him the best start to the season. Whitmore, 31.6, does his personal best. In fact, he's at the purple middle sector, 31 or 33.1, which is 0.3 faster than our race leader. But Bolger just a little bit quicker in the final sector, sort of keeps that gap under a second for now. To the battle for 5th. And Cracker still all over the back of Mike Coulston, like white on rice. And Brendon Ross behind is closing very, very quickly. These two travelling in the 32s, 32.8 for Coulston, 32.5 for Cracker, but a 31.7 for Brendon Ross behind, who's almost visually closing on these two. As you can see, behind them, Termo also recovering. He's got to navigate Brownie, who looks like, I was going to say, looked like he was closing, but on that last lap, about 0.7 slower than his teammate. A little bit of a lock-up. Coulston runs a little bit wide. Not as wide as last time. Gets a little bit of a nudge there from Cracker, who was a bit quicker through the chicane. But Cracker not going to be able to capitalise at this point. Brendon Ross hasn't had the greatest run through the middle sector, and it looks like Termo having a look at Brownie into the final corner. It's just a little bit too quick to make a move unless you're right up alongside. This car just doesn't slow down quite enough to make up this time and space under braking, but he's got a good exit, and he should get Brownie into turn 1. In fact, he's got him before that. Got him just before the start-finish line. So Termo up into 8th, and about 3 seconds behind Brendon Ross. And Bolger 2.6 behind Whitmore now, so he's made a mistake somewhere, and it wasn't. Must have been in the final sector, so we'll just go back. I apologise for go back like this, looking very unprofessional, but let's try and see where this has happened. A long time ago. It looks like we got a big slide on a turn 4 there. Back live, 2.6 behind Whitmore, and Whitmore actually, live timing says 1.3, it's less than that now, I think. 0.8 of a second between himself and Ricky Slick. I did say that battle might have sort of ended, but Whitmore, you have seen, he's quite consistent, and he's just closing little bit by little bit on Ricky Slick. So he's given himself a chance now to move up a spot. Just put a little bit of time on Steve Bolger, a little bit more time on Steve Bolger as well. 31.9 for Bolger, 31.5 for Whitmore, so personal best for him. Oh, so Cracker has got ahead of Mike Coulston, and Brendon Ross looks like he's going to try and pass both of them. It's very late on the brakes and sends Cracker off the road, so I don't think Cracker will be too happy with that one. It's a very, very big dive, and now Cracker's now going to lose out to Termo behind as well. So just come back and see what happened on the replay. Alright, so on the replay, coming into the final corner, it's like Cracker got a decent run. Coulston just ran wide there in the mid-corner, and that allowed Cracker through and gave Ross a run. And then we cut forward. In fact, we'll ride or Coulston would have had a good view of the incident coming into turn 1. Cracker no, actually there was no contact, so Cracker just lost it off power. He did give space to Ross, so there was no contact, my mistake. But it did look like there was maybe a little bit of lag that sent him wide, but just a mistake from Cracker, and all this hard work to get past Coulston has come undone. And that's allowed Brendon Ross up to P5. Coulston sort of holds position now, P6. Termo up another spot to P7. Cracker back down to P8. It's a battle between the front two. Or sorry, second and third. Still about 4/10 of a second. In fact, they sort of gained a little bit in that last sector. Did Ricky Slick? Gap was about 4.8 seconds. It's now 4.6. Well, it's now back out to 4.9 between Slick and Foley. Say at this stage, Whitmore, a little bit of a lock-up, and Slick runs wide. It's going to allow Whitmore to get alongside, and he will get up on the inside coming into the chicane. I don't know if he's close enough. No, he's not quite close enough to be alongside, but he's close enough to have a dive, which he's going to do. Bit of a lock-up, does pull it up. It will give Slick a chance at a switchback coming into the final corner, but no, Whitmore does get it done. And he should have enough of a gap to hold on to P2, barring a mistake into the final corner. So, importantly for Whitmore, he's now up into P2. That would give Foley probably a little bit more breathing room, but Whitmore, who has been a little bit quicker the last few laps than Ricky Slick, that moves him up into P2. And Steve Bolger's actually gained about half a second over Slick through that battling. 2.3 seconds over the line, and Steve Bolger, he's got Brendon Ross 5.8 seconds. It was about 3/10 faster in that final sector there, was Brendon Ross over Steve Bolger, so those two might come together at some stage of the race, but Ross is going to have to push pretty difficult with only 10 minutes remaining behind them. And we've got Cracker up the inside of Coulston into turn 1. Both give each other a bit of room, a bit of space. Termo has already got past Coulston, and Coulston running too wide there in turn 1, and that allows Cracker now up into P7. So I think Coulston must have made a mistake. Yes, a 1:36.5, so he's made a mistake in the middle sector, I'd say, at the chicane. We didn't see it, but 36.7 in the middle sector. You want to be about 3 seconds faster. So that's where he's made a mistake and allowed Termo up into P6 and given Cracker a decent run into turn 1. Termo is 5.6, 5.9 behind Brendon Ross. So it's all sort of spreading out just a little bit, which is a bit unfortunate with 9 minutes remaining. See a massive lock up there from Whitmore into the final turn. Get of it. This will be vibrating just a little bit with a bit of a flat spot, but he's pulled out at 1.6 seconds. Let's see what it is over the line. Probably a little bit more, maybe. 1.8 at the line. But I think the next battle we're going to see Ricky Slick, Steve Bolger. The gap 2.3 seconds. Around about the same on this lap. Or that last lap, I should say. But it does look like Steve Bolger is just a little bit quicker at this point of the race. And then Bolger, he's got Brendon Ross 5.3 seconds behind, and Ross about a tenth faster on that last lap. And Bolger was about 2/10 or 1.5 tenths faster than Ricky Slick on that last lap. So just a little increment, but there's a bit of time between them. So probably going to have to wait and see it for a couple laps to see where that shakes out. Looking at the lap times between Whitmore and Foley, they're around about the same actually. So Whitmore will sort of be kicking himself for not quite getting his qualifying lap right, and being stuck behind drivers that is just marginally faster than us. You see Ricky Slick make a mistake, outbrakes himself at the chicane. Doesn't go all the way off the road, but he's lost himself a lot of time. Gap was 2.4 seconds to Bolger. It's now 1.2, so it's been halved. Brendon Ross, he's about half a second faster on this lap than Steve Bolger as well. So these guys could be the next big battle. once again, Whitmore about half a second faster. Gap down to 4.8 seconds between the two leaders, but Foley can probably take it easy and just rest his tyres a little bit. Give that front left a bit of a break, as we see Ricky Slick using up all his front left. And that's just going to encourage Steve Bolger in the Martini liveried, give him a bit more confidence to push just that little bit more. The gap now under a second, so 7/10 of a second between Slick and Bolger. Back right on board, the Gravel Rush racing driver. Now just to compare fastest laps between this season and last season. In last season in the first race, the fastest lap of the race is a 31.0. In this season, 31.2. Remained just a hair slower. Obviously, the track not as rubbered up as last season, but I do believe Ross and Owen, who said the two fastest times, did have 20 kilos of weight on board, so probably around about the same level, at least at the front end of the field. And once again, Whitmore half a second faster than Foley, so the gap 4.2 seconds. Still a lot of time though remaining in the race. Foley probably just taking it easy, saving his tyres. And you see Ricky Slick once again wide at turn 1. In fact, that might give Bolger, it does give Bolger P3. So 2 laps in a row, Ricky Slick running wide at turn 1. Had a look into turn 4. Was having a look at turn 4. Bolger tried to do the double apex, but Slick sent it up the inside. And now Bolger has to defend through the 2 left-handers. And Slick probably not going to get around the outside here, so he's going to have to wait now until the chicane. So he's going to need a good exit. He is close enough for a dive. You see Bolger. Oh, he's got a bit of contact. It looks like Slick was going to try and send it and go the switch back under braking, but with Bolger in front, just braking a little bit early, did catch him off guard. Thankfully, the contact didn't send Bolger spearing off the road, or Ricky Slick spearing off the road. And once again, another lock-up, this time from Bolger. That's going to allow Slick to stay within range. We'll get a little bit of a slipstream, but I don't think it's going to be enough to give Ricky Slick a chance to pass into turn 1. His best hope will be into turn 4. And with these two battling, the gap between Slick and Ross now 2.1 seconds, 34.5 for Slick, and a 33.2 for Bolger, and a 32.2 for Brendon Ross. And we see Bolger a little bit wide now at turn 1. Ricky Slick hits the apex this time. First time in 3 laps. He's got a very good chance going into turn 4. Just got to watch the kink. Sends it up the inside. Makes it 5 metres later and gets it done for now. Gets it done, well, for good at this point. Bolger won't be able to get him back. So Slick convincingly gets P3 back, but Bolger having another look there up the inside, and then Slick running a little bit wide on the exit. These two continuing to battle it out. The gap at the front, 3.2 seconds between Foley and Whitmore. Foley got a track cut on that last lap. Doesn't have a lap time for me on live races. So it's all heating up with 3.5 minutes remaining, plus that extra lap. 3 seconds. So Whitmore relentlessly pushing and closing in on Brenton Foley. While Ricky Slick is trying to desperately hold on to P3 with Steve Bolger all over the back of him. He was once ahead of him for about half for a lap. And Brendon Ross also closing in rapidly. 33.0, 33.8, but for Brendon Ross a 32.3, so he's 7/10 faster than Ricky Slick. Bolger got a decent run close enough for a dive, but the car in front would need to be compliant. Decides against it. Its best bet now will be up to the left-hander. 7 here. Quite close enough again, so he's going to have to go at the chicane. Or perhaps he's going to set it up into turn 1. Yeah, not quite close enough at the chicane. Slick getting very wide. Can't quite get the nose in, so was going to try and take the wider line in to set up the exit, but couldn't quite get the nose in. And Brendon Ross now, he's right with Steve Bolger. There's not a great exit there from Ricky Slick, and now Steve Bolger is going to have a look into turn 1. He's got a slightly better run. Brendon Ross trying to get a bit of slipstream of Steve Bolger. And Bolger doesn't move back to the outside. Wasn't quite close enough to make the move. Just had a look up the inside. Gets a little bit of a twitch on, but holds on to it. And now he'll be hoping to get a good exit out of turn 2 now. A little bit of a slipstream. Does show his nose, not quite close enough to turn 4, and now he's got to not muck up, because if he mucks up just a little bit, Brendon Ross is right there to capitalise, so he's got to keep an eye in his mirrors and in front of him, as you see, oh no, maybe not, as Brendon Ross runs a little bit wide there on the exit, so that gives Steve Bolger a little bit of respite, but not much, as we're now under a minute remaining. And the battle for the lead, 1.8 seconds at the last timing split, but I reckon it's a little bit under that now. Coming up to the second split, 1.2 seconds between the leaders. So Whitmore, I would have argued that he probably didn't really have much of a chance once he got past Ricky Slick. The gap in front was about 7 or 8 seconds. And the pace between himself and Foley wasn't all that much, but he's got it now within sight. And as Foley crosses the line with time remaining, this will, he'll cross the line on this lap, and this will be the penultimate lap. So he does have a couple more chances, a lap and 3/4 to get the job done. Does Wayne Whitmore? Now under a second, and behind them, the battle for third, very, very hard, as we see Bolger very, very close to Ricky Slick. He's got a good run through turn 1. Is he close enough? I don't think so. Shows his nose. Late on the brakes, but again, not quite close enough. He sort of compromises himself a little bit. Brendon Ross right there. And Ross almost running wide again. And the battle for the lead is on. So just cut it to it at the right time. Foley must have made a mistake somewhere in the middle sector, or the first sector. But Wayne Whitmore right there. A little bit of a lock-up from Foley. Into the chicane. Taking a shallow line on the exit. Whitmore's got a decent exit. So he does show his nose, but he's probably going to try and set it up into turn 1. It will be the final lap next time around. He will have a good chance into turn 1, but he will have a good chance. Looks like Foley's front left is gone. Whitmore all over the back of him. Behind them, Steve Bolger has moved up into third, but he's got Slick on his inside, and he runs wide at the final corner, so Slick takes third back, and Foley's got a good run on both of them, and they're going to go 3 wide into turn 1. Foley holds on for the lead, but no, he doesn't. He runs wide at turn 1, so Whitmore into the lead on the final lap of the race at turn 1. Ricky Slick holds on to third for now. Bolger, a little bit of a lock-up and slide at turn 1, but he holds on to fourth for now, but he's got Brendon Ross right behind him, and he's got Ricky Slick right in front of him. Ross right behind Bolger, has to back out of it in turn 3. Slick goes defensive, and Bolger has to go the long way round, and that's in fact going to give Ross a decent run. In fact, it'll give Ross the position, but Bolger will try and hold on around the outside at turn 4. Still side by side into the braking zone, so Bolger should hold on. Little bit of contact. Ross still around the outside. Bolger holds on for now. But Whitmore, he's gone through the chicane. He's only got one braking zone remaining. So he's stolen victory at the end. So Foley's tyres must have just gone off. He's just overdriven the thing. Whitmore, driven nice and smoothly, gets the lead on the final lap. He's got 2 corners to go. 1 corner to go. He doesn't stuff that up. And Wayne Whitmore will take victory in, well, race 1, round 1. It's Goiania. Brenton Foley can't quite hold on, but he'll finish second, which is much better than what he managed last season. Ricky Slick will hold on for P3, but can Brendon Ross steal 4th at the end? Not quite. Steve Bolger holds on to 4th. Brendon Ross 5th. Termo recovers to P6. Mike Coulston, after having a battle between himself and Cracker for a large portion of that race, finds himself in front, about 5 seconds in front of Cracker. So Cracker has made a mistake at some point that dropped him behind the flat spot racing car. Cracker will finish in 8th place. Brownie will finish 9th. Behind them, Glenn Isles will finish in 10th place. And then Brian Walsh will finish in 11th. So we're going to have all finishes unless Brian Walsh bins it at the final corner. Or do a Mike Coulston run out of fuel on the final lap with the corner remaining. Glenn Miles finishes in 10th. Brian Walsh coming out of the final turn. He will finish in 11th. And this is one of the few times where we've actually had everybody finish, which is good to see. And just going through a lot of the fastest lap times or drivers' best lap times, it's actually good to see all drivers within about 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds, which is really good to see compared to a lot of other seasons and series that we've had. That the slower guys are starting to get a little bit quicker, which is good to see. But what a fantastic finish in the mid part of that race. I thought it was we're going to get a bit of a boring finish with a lot of gaps starting to form and drivers that were faster than others sort of getting past guys that they were battling with. But Wayne Whitmore was relentless in his chase of Brenton Foley. And Foley, he has had problems with his front tyres in the past. And I think that's come and struck him once again. And Whitmore stealing it on the last lap as Brenton Foley outbroke himself into turn 1. And then we had Ricky Slick battle it out with Steve Bolger, who was a little ways off for a large portion of that race, but dragged that gap back down. And they had a battle for a couple laps, and Brendon Ross was recovering from once running in 2nd position. He was having a go at Brenton Foley as well on the first couple laps, but a little bit of contact dropped him down the field between himself and Termo, so that's why they dropped through the field. And then obviously Ross made a big battle of it with himself, between himself and Bolger, and Slick towards the end. So some fantastic battling and some good racing and some drives improving, which is good to see. Anyway, we'll just take a short break. Just got to set the reverse grid, which will be everybody for the second race of the night here, but we shall be back soon. Alright, so welcome back. The reverse grid has been set. Still got about 8 or so minutes to go in the warm-up. In fact, probably a little bit more than that actually. Driver's just getting out there just to do a couple extra laps. The track should be a little bit greener compared to the first session, with the server having to be reset. The rubber also gets reset to whatever the preset is. And you can see one of the FCR Motorsports, I believe that's Brendon Ross, doing a bit of circle work out there. And it's Mike Coulston, one of the new liveried cars for Season 3. And we've got Cracker in one of the old cars from Season 2, but with a brand new banner. And also new teammate as well, with Brownie alongside him this season. And there we go, there's Steve Bolger, another new livery, Martini, liveried Renault. Obviously one of the more iconic liveries in motorsport, with rally cars, Formula 1 cars, pretty sure endurance racing cars as well. Got all kinds of cars that have had Martini. I believe Ferrari even had Martini sponsorship and a small logo, I believe, on their 2006 and 7 cars as well. So Martini, they've had their logo plastered everywhere. But once again, we'll just go over just a bit of track info for you out there. If you haven't seen a track before, do apologise for it being a little bit warped, but there it is. And I haven't done quite a few laps around here myself. Turn 1, quite tricky. You think, okay, yeah, just carry a bit of speed into it, down a couple of gears, and she'll be right. But in these front-wheel drive touring cars that with the diff settings and how you set them up to drive them quickly, turn 1, if you don't set the car up quickly, or if you don't have very, very good driver inputs with throttle, brake, and the steering wheel, turn 1, especially in turn in, is quite tricky. We've seen quite a number of drivers sort of get a bit sideways, particularly just after the entry, and that's because, yeah, just the rear end gets loose, and that's due to two reasons. That's either due to the coast setting being very low, due to these being touring cars and you sort of need them to help turn, or because they don't have enough, well, they have too much rear tyre pressure to help the rear end slide around to make you faster through some of the other corners on the circuit. But yes, turn 1 is the most difficult corner on the circuit. I'd argue it's actually one of the more difficult corners actually on the entire touring car calendar, or calendars, going back to every season we've driven. It's always been on the touring car championship calendar, but throughout all the tracks we've driven, I think turn 1 here is still one of the more difficult ones for these cars. And getting it right, obviously it is a passing manoeuvre with that, or passing place with obviously the long run coming out of the final 2 turns there. And then it also sets up one. If you get a good run through there and the guy in front does make a slight mistake, it gives you a good chance to turn into turns 3 and 4. And even then, if it gets you close enough, it can set you up into Bico de Pato there, that left-hander coming up to, or just after, as you can see, that long left-hander there in the middle sector. You can also pass at the S chicane, as we've seen in previous seasons. Haven't so much seen it this evening. It's also where we've seen some of our biggest crashes in this series as well. I think we did see, I believe it was Cameron Costa get himself disqualified for cutting the chicane and just gunning it on the throttle and punting. I believe it might have been Cracker or Baker on the exit there. And did see another couple other accidents there in Season 2 as well. And then you got the last 2 corners, or last corner really, probably the easiest corner on the circuit, but it is still quite important. You don't want to muck up the exit, as we saw with a number of drivers with Ricky Slick and Bolger, that battle between those two, both of those drivers losing out positions to each other due to running wide in the mid corner. You want to get on the power early after the initial braking, but towards the end of the race it can be difficult. The front left-hand tyre, as you can see, with a lot of corners being right-handers and these being front-wheel drive cars, that front left cops an absolute battering. And I think that's probably why Wayne Whitmore was able just to sneak the win. He took better care of his tyres, and Brenton Foley has been a driver who has told us numerous times in interviews that he does use up his tyres quite a bit with aggressive setup and driving, and he's used to driving rear wheel drive cars. He's quite adept in the supercars in particular, quite quick. But these things, entirely different kettle of fish, and you got to be smooth, and you can get lapped. You can be quick in these things, but over a course of a race, it's very easy to wear tyres out by just planting your foot. You've got to be a little bit smoother in a race instead of less ham-fisted, so to speak. But just go out there, have a look and see what people do. Still got Steve Bolger out there. Haven't got the HUD up at the moment. In fact, I'll just bring that up for you. Still got 3 minutes remaining in this warm-up session. We've currently got 3 drivers out there that have settled that. So I've got Steve Bolger on a 32.9, Coulston only 2/10 off, and Cracker 3/10 off. So hopefully remains pretty similar in the race, where we've got a very closely packed field. Something that I did mention towards the end at the end, we had that little break of just after that race 1 ended there. Obviously, seeing the guys at the bottom of the field, seeing their lap times come up from last season in particular, where they're a good second faster than what they managed last season. So I'm happy to see guys like Brian Walsh and Glenn Miles, see, instead of being in the 35s and 36s, they were able to drop down to 34s and 33s even. So it's really good to see those guys finding a bit of time. Brownie, don't believe he drove in this race last season. Did drive in the touring cars last season, but I'm not sure if he made round 1. But he's not too bad out there. Also in the 33s, and fastest laps of the race being in the 31s. You know, if you only got 3 seconds difference around such a big track like this, and with some tricky corners like turn 1, it's good to see. So hopefully it's a trend that continues. Hopefully we see those guys at the bottom get even quicker throughout the season, find a bit more time, and we have even closer fields. I've had no one join in this warm-up session between races, so it looks like it's going to be another 11-car race. Brendon Ross has set a lap time, all times in the 33s except for Boulder's 32.9. And it looks like Cracker now the only one there that is out there on the circuit. So we'll just follow him around. And just having a look back at last season's race. It was compared to the season, or the race 1 race, it was the race 1 race last season was 18 laps, just like it was tonight, with the faster guys going out there and obviously being quick from start to finish. Obviously it's a bit more difficult in the reverse grid races, and in the second race last season where we had that epic battle between Matt Williams and Scott Morrill, it's actually 1 lap less, so that means the race is about a minute and a half shorter. In fact, 2 minutes, pretty much 2 minutes shorter, as the times were down. The fastest lap in that race was a 31.8. That was set by James Owen. And the second fastest lap was a 31.9 for Brendon Ross, who finished second after Scott Morrill made a move on the final lap, but couldn't quite make it stick. That dropped him down the field. But himself and Matt Williams put on a fantastic show. And there was a good 25 cars that showed up for that race. Obviously a bit of a far cry this time out, but hopefully throughout the season we do see numbers pick up. And we're just about to tick over to Race 2, the reverse grid race. And it's going to be pretty interesting. Looking at the track usage at the moment, it's actually light, so there's not going to be much grip out there, but throughout the race, the track should get quicker and quicker, which will be interesting with the driver's tyres getting more worn and worn at the same time. So the first few laps, you're going to want to take it easy on your tyres, in particular. You may even just ease off battling for a while. Just get yourself into a decent position and then attack towards the end of the race if you've got a little bit more tyre left than the other guys. Because the first couple of laps you are going to be understeering and sliding a little bit more. And it's going to be easy for drivers to wreck their tyres if they're not too careful. And as we saw, it's very vital with Brenton Foley. It looks like his tyres fading at the end of race 1. Anyway, the drivers have formed up on the grid. The 2 Playboy cars will lead us away this time out. And the Camaro safety car just waiting for the right time to get us underway, and away we go for race 2 of round 1, season 3. We've got Brian Walsh in the Playboy Racing Ford Focus will lead us away. His teammate a little bit slow getting away there. Slight livery change. It's very similar to last year's, but the bonnet has, and the team has seen a new major sponsor in Playboy come aboard this season. Also covers across their GT cars as well. And we've got Glenn Miles in P2. Both those guys are hoping to be a bit more consistent in this one and hopefully nab a decent result. We've got Brownie. He also showed some okay speed, just needs to be a little bit more consistent. He'll start in 3rd place. Cracker, he was quicker than Coulston, but so we made a mistake off screen that dropped him well behind Coulston after he finally got past him after those two had a battle through a large portion of the race. He'll start 4th, and then we've got Mike Coulston, Flat Sport Racing / Scuderia Alitalia. Same or very similar livery to his Super 2 livery. He'll start in P5. Got Termo for Irwin Racing. He's switched from, he's dropped the Castrol sponsorship and it's got a new major sponsor in Irwin to jump on board. And River Whisper will be his teammate once he's not hungover and feeling quote-unquote dead. We've got Brendon Ross will start in P7 with Steve Bolger alongside. And behind them we've got Ricky Slick and Brenton Foley. And, this is where the meat is. These guys all got to navigate through the field as well as through themselves early on in the race, and Wayne Whitmore will start last. So still got a couple corners for the drivers to navigate, but as I was mentioning, from Ross all the way back down to Wayne Whitmore, those guys have got to get their way through, pick their way through the slower guys, but they've got to do it in a way where they don't lose out or compromise themselves to a lot of the faster guys going around. And they can't afford really to get stuck behind, at least for too long, behind the slower drivers while faster guys get away. Anyway, we're just about to start the race, and away we go. Ryan Walsh leads away. Looks like Glenn Miles has got a better start. In fact, Glenn Miles in the lead, but Walsh breaks late and holds on. Brownie very deep on the brakes, and Brownie now up into P2 and Coulston up into P3. So Glenn Miles very conservative. Glenn Miles getting absolutely swamped. He's down quite a few spots now. He's down to 7th and runs wide on the grass. We saw this in season 2 or season 1 where saw a driver run wide and then cause a massive pile up, but he's unfortunately dropped from the lead momentarily down to last place. But Brian Walsh leads. Mike Coulston up into 2nd, and he's got Brownie right behind. And then we've got Ross and Slick already in 4th and 5th places. trading places and maybe even trading a little bit of paint as well. They've got Brenton Foley right behind in 6th. Cracker down to 7th. Whitmore up 3 to 8th. As we see, Cracker a little bit sideways under braking there. And we see a couple of cars out of place at the chicane. Coulston looks like he's under attack from Brendon Ross. Brendon Ross is going to get past him and perhaps Foley as well. Sort of stuck in the middle is Coulston, and Slick goes deep. Bit of contact between himself and Coulston. And both Slick and as we see, that was Brian Walsh wide. But yeah, Slick and I think that's Cracker ran wide. So Coulston drops down a spot, and now we've got Ross and Foley at it again. They're already battling for the lead as Foley now into the lead after one lap. But he's got his teammate right there with him. Foley goes for the lead. They're going to go side by side, a little bit sideways. It's Brendon Ross, and they've got Brownie right behind. And now we've got the two Scuderia Italia cars / flat spot racing cars together on track. So Whitmore's got past Bolger and Termo. You see Ricky Slick having a look up the inside of Brian Walsh and Cracker. And see Brian Walsh a little bit wide there. That will allow Ricky Slick up a spot. And we see, well, Ross was into the lead, but Foley trying to go around the outside at Magullo. So Foley now back into the lead. But Ross is close enough to have a dive into S, or the chicane. The side's better of it for now. The two FCR cars lead. We've got Brownie, Coulston. And we see Ricky Slick's around. Ricky Slick is around. Let's just... Brian Walsh not accelerating away, so perhaps Brian Walsh giving him a bit of a serve. We'll just ride on board Brian Walsh and see what happened. So Cracker lost the rear end, and then Brian Walsh not watching where he's going, just gives Ricky Slick a massive serve. A bit of silly driving there. Brian Walsh not paying too much attention, and in fact, now Brian Walsh down to last. So both the Playboy Racing car started on the front, and then 2 laps later, they're both at the back. But at the front, right, Brendon Ross up the inside at turn 1, but on the switchback, Brenton Foley gets him back for the lead. And Italia cars / flat spot racing cars also duking it out. And Foley locks up a little bit into turn 4 there, but holds on. But Brendon Ross is not giving up. These two separated by a cigarette paper. You could say a Galois cigarette paper. And Brownie actually doing a pretty commendable job there in P3. He's built up a little bit of a gap over Mike Coulston now as he battles with his teammate. At the front though, Ross and Foley having a ding-dong battle. Both of them locking up into the chicane. A little bit wide there from Foley. It's going to compromise his exit, and Ross is going to have a decent run coming into the final corner. It is a slight overlap now, so Ross is a chance to make the move. And in the background, looks like Whitmore has got past Mike Coulston as we see Brendon Ross make the move. And they're going to go side by side down the straight. I think Foley will get the slightly better run, but Ross will be able to tuck in for a slipstream if he wants it and have another go. 32.3 for Ross for fastest lap of the race. And in the background, we've got Wayne Whitmore already straight away past Brownie. Brownie having a go into turn 1, has a look, but the side's better of it. As Brendon Ross up the inside of Foley once again. So these guys have been side by side into turn 1 for pretty much every time, all 4 laps so far. Ross having a go now up the inside into turn 4 and gets the job done. So these guys have traded positions with 3 or 4 times at least now. And we've got Brownie now up into P3, so it looks like Whitmore's made a mistake. Yeah, so it looks like into turn 1, just Whitmore just outbroke himself. And now he's got to do that job all over again behind him. Coulston under massive attack from Termo. So we see Whitmore in front have a look up the inside of Brownie. Gets it sideways, gets it wrong. He's around. Unfortunately, into the path of Brown. He's got damage and gets straight back on the accelerator. He'll hold on to P3, and that drops now Whitmore behind that queue of angry cars as Whitmore has a look. Coulston has a look up the inside of Brownie for P3. Very late on the brakes, avoids contact, sort of balks himself a little bit as Brownie goes wide, and they're going to go 3 wide down the straight as Termo's right there, as is Bolger. So Coulston temporarily up into P3, but I think Termo will nip that from him, and I reckon Bolger might have a go as well at moving up past Mike Coulston. They didn't go 3, no, they're going to go 4 wide into turn 1. And Coulston sweeps in front and sweeps between Bolger and Termo. So fantastic driving from Mike Coulston as Termo got it slightly wrong and Bolger backed out of it, but Bolger now tries to get the switchback on Mike Coulston, and he will just get it done, and Brownie gives Termo a bit of a serve. Termo back on the throttle, gets it back going again. But Coulston not giving up on P3. He's going to have another look into Pico de Pato, but decides against it. But he did some great racing there to get himself back up into P3, even though it was momentarily. So he's not giving up on a podium place just yet, even if he doesn't quite have the pace of Steve Bolger, Termo at the moment. Termo outbrakes himself at the chicane, but Coulston runs wide. Foley and Ross continue to battle it out for the lead. I'm just looking, Wayne Whitmore's down in 11th place, so I'm just having a look. He hasn't got a first sector time, so I wonder what has happened. What has happened here? I reckon he's got a front right puncture. Yeah, he's going into the pit, so absolute disaster for Wayne Whitmore. I don't know what's happened, but our race 1 winner is having to come back to the pits, and the pit lane's limit line is actually where those cones are, so I reckon he's given himself a penalty from coming in too hot there. Brendon Ross and Foley continue to duke it out. Termo has got past Mike Coulston now. Apologise for missing that on screen, but that is a habit of the screen of Monday night streams. This Bolger gets all kinds of sideways. That's allowed Termo to close right up. Also allows Coulston to get another crack as well. And Bolger looked like he outbroke himself. He probably did a little bit. He's cost himself a little bit of time locking up to Pico de Pato. Termo right behind him. Cigarette paper between these two. A little bit of an awkward entry there for Bolger. Termo, he will have a chance into the final turn. But he could send it in the final turn, or he could be patient and set it up for a move into turn 1. What does he do? He's setting it up for turn 1. And yeah, there it is. Wayne Whitmore drive-through penalty. The pit line is those cones at the start. It did catch a number of drivers out, I believe, in Season 1 where that happened, as we see Steve Bolger go defensive. And it might have caught a couple of drives out in last season as well, where they got damage. But Bolger defensive into turn 1. It's going to compromise his line through it. But Termo going to try and go around the outside. Ambitious. Runs a little bit wide. Hasn't really lost too much time though. Still in with a shout into turn 4. Shows his nose. Sends it. Bolger gives him room. They're going to go side by side. And Termo now up into P3. So he's done a great job to get himself up the field. But he's a good 7.6 seconds behind Foley and Ross. But those two are susceptible to tyre wear. As Bolger does try and get that move back. But not quite close enough. They've dropped Mike Coulston. He's 1.7 seconds behind. And he's got 1.8 seconds over Ricky Slick, who's just got past Brownie. So Ricky Slick trying to recover after being knocked off the road early on. Behind Brownie, there's Cracker in P8. And there's Mike Coulston serving his drive. Hopefully he didn't do it again. He might have, you know. It's just right on board, just to make sure. He's just been lapped. I reckon he has, you know. I reckon he has. So he's going to be fuming. See, pit stops aren't compulsory in this series, so drivers don't normally test where the pit entry is, and it being a Brazilian circuit where people aren't really too fond of, they don't know where it is, and unfortunately he's going to have another one. Yep, there it is. As we see, Brenton Foley's got a fantastic run out of the first turn, and he doesn't send it this time, as Ross locks up a little bit in front of him. Actually, it's probably more that the one of his tyres is unweighted, just bouncing across the surface of the road. They've now got 8.3 seconds over Termo behind, so that even though these two are battling, they're still quicker than everybody else out there at the moment. A little bit wide from Ross. Foley trying to get the switch back on. He's got a slightly better exit. Now, will he send it up the inside, or will he wait? Alright, he's going to wait for now. Perhaps he's just trying to save his tyres a little bit. Let Ross do all the hard work and then get him right at the end. Actually lost a little bit of time to Termo in the mid-sector this time out. He's still got 8 seconds with 12 minutes remaining and probably about 7 or 8 laps, probably 8 laps to go in the race. Yeah, it looks like Foley just taking it easy as you see Ross get it sideways. As you can see, very easy to do in a turn 1. Looks like Foley this time is just waiting for a little bit of a bigger mistake just to send it. He's close enough for a move. It backs out of it, so he's just biding his time. Obviously, if he is playing the championship game, Ross was a couple positions down. Ross was 4th or 5th in that first race, so if he is playing the championship game, he could take a 2nd place, but I don't think he is. I think he's just saving his tyres, as in that first race, not having tyres at the end cost him victory, even though he did have a substantial lead over Wayne Whitmore. And it looks like Whitmore hasn't got himself another penalty. I don't know if he's served it again, but perhaps he's got the pit lane. He has served it, and well, hopefully he's served it and got the entry right this time. Foley once again close coming out of the chicane. It looks like he's just going to back out of it for now. So those two looks like they're just racing at their own pace. Termo in 3rd. He's slowly catching, a couple tenths per second. In fact, Termo fastest first sector of the race this lap around. Just waiting for Live Racers to update the middle sector for me. Doesn't look like it's going to, so I reckon Termo might have got a track cut in there somewhere. We'll see as he crosses the start-finish line. Yep, looks like he got a track cut and in fact lost a bit of time. Lost about half a second, so he's cut and lost time. Bolger set a 32.8, 2 leaders, 32.1 and a 32.2. And now I've got Ricky Slick and Coulston battling it out for 4th place. The Rust Bucket leaning on Mike Coulston out of turn 2 there. Sends it up the inside. Ooh, a little bit of a contact between himself and Coulston. Coulston looks like he's going to try and get the switch back, but he's not been quite close enough just yet. But you can send it up the inside here into Bico de Pato. Has a look. Backs out of it, and Ricky Slick now up into 5th place. You'll probably see him edge away now from Mike Coulston. Ricky Slick on that last lap to 32.9 compared to Coulston to 33.8. So he's got 9 tenths of a second on him. Cracker now. He's past Brownie for P7. And they've got a good 17 or so seconds over at the Playboy Racing cars. They've remained fairly close together. They've both set fastest laps of... in fact, they've both set a fastest lap of a 1:34.632. So they've set identical fastest laps. But looking at their last laps, they're just not too consistent out there in the 35s and 36s. So they'll be hoping to find a little bit more time out there, a bit more consistency. And at the front still. So it just looks like Foley still just pacing himself, taking his time. While Ross uses up all his tyres. That said, those kind of decent run through Biko to Pato. Still just biding his time as Ross runs wide at the chicane. In fact, no, Foley backed out of it. He could have taken the lead there. Now, I wonder what he's thinking, because he could have taken the lead there. But it looks like he just wants Brendon Ross to hold station. Or perhaps there's some team orders in play. I don't know. Foley could have easily taken the lead there. It'll be interesting, actually, once Termo crosses the line to see how much time they lost through that little error. In fact, I don't think it actually lost them too much time at all. In fact, no, 3/10. No, that was the previous lap. 3/10 of a second. See, Termo drifting it there through turn 1. And it looks like Bolger's actually dropped a little bit off Termo on that last lap, so perhaps a mistake there from the Renault driver at some point. So he locks up there into turn 4. That's a big one. Keeps it going though, but he's probably driving on a 50-cent piece. These guys only separated by 1.5 seconds. They've got 8.4 to Foley in front, and Ricky Slick 5.7 behind. So we could see maybe Ricky Slick maybe edge up towards them. But on that last lap, a 33.1 for Ricky Slick, at half a second, just over half a second slower than Steve Bolger. So that's probably unlikely, barring a mistake or a battle between Bolger and Termo. But Coulson's actually done a fairly decent job hanging onto the back of Ricky Slick. And I think we'll see probably see Cracker actually resume his battle between himself and Coulson. Obviously, they had a big battle in the first race. With Cracker did come out on top for a large, well, eventually, and then made a mistake, which wasn't picked up on stream, that dropped him a good 20 seconds down the field. So, big incident or spin for him, dropped him down the field. 33.7 for him, a 34.0 for Coulson. Ricky Slick on that last lap. Blank. So he had a track cut in the final sector and he runs wide. Turn 1, that was a habit that he made in the first race. It eventually cost him a little bit of cost him position to Steve Bolger for a couple laps, but he got that position back in the end. And we've actually had a change for the lead. So Foley has taken the lead. Just have a look and see what has happened here. Yeah, so it looks like Ross just ran wide at turn 1 and Foley's just gone, no, well, I've had enough of trailing it out. I want the lead. And there it is. So Foley in the lead, but looks like Ross wants it back straight away. In the slipstream, pulls out. He's going to have a go into turn 1. These guys have 9.3 over Termo behind. And Ross into the lead now. Foley going to try and hang it around the outside, but he's not going to be fast enough to hold on for now. But he is close enough for a move. Looks like Ross will go defensive. Goes to the middle of the road. Foley's going to try and stick it up the inside. Locks up a little bit trying to avoid him. Ross holds on for now. So these two, with 4 minutes remaining, the battle's just turned up a notch. And both of them now wanting the lead. Foley wanting to battle. Doesn't want to sit behind Ross now. I think he's just saved his tyres enough and wants to get in the lead and stay there. You can see Foley taking that wider entry. Gives him a better exit through the chicane. Sets himself up nicely through the right-hander. Right-hand part of the chicane. He's got a good run. He's going to have a go now. As we saw earlier in the race, he wasn't having a go into the final corner, but he is now. Decides better of it. Wants to set himself up for a run into turn 1. And immediately, Brendon Ross to the inside wall. Going defensive. As you can see, Foley gaining just a little bit. And behind, we've seen actually Bolger is moved in front of Termo, so we'll just cut back. They're side by side. So we'll see what happens into turn 1, and then we might have to cut back for a replay and see what happened, because there was a good 1.5 seconds between the two. But Bolger locks up, goes deep into turn 1. Termo actually having to get on the brake mid-corner just to slow down, not to run in the back of him. For the lead, Ross still leads, but we'll just cut back to a replay, and we'll just see what happened here. So it must have started, I reckon, probably the first sector. It looked like Termo's first sector, 35.9, which is a bit slower than everybody else's, at least at the front end of the field. And 7/10 slower than Bolger, so that's where the gap come down. Bolger now holds the lead, or not the lead, holds third. Ross holds the lead, just under 2 minutes remaining. So once again, towards the end of the race, had a couple battles just start to heat up. Middle part of the race a bit quiet, but now there's something to play for. Final spot on the podium and a race win. Foley sticking in that slipstream of his teammate. Shows his nose. Not going to be close enough, I don't think. A little bit of a slide there for Ross. It's going to give Foley a decent run into turn 4. Ross just sort of sticking to the middle of the road. A little bit defensive. He holds onto the lead behind them. Termo pretty close to Steve Bolger. Not quite close enough for a dive. And we've had Mike Coulson get passed by Cracker at some stage as well. And these two, Bolger and Termo, they're well in front of Ricky Slick, 9.5 seconds. So barring mistake, these two will be the only ones battling out for the final spot on the podium. And for the lead, Foley all over the back of Brendon Ross. 25 seconds to go. They should cross the start-finish line with probably about 2 or 3 seconds remaining, I'd say. I wonder if Brendon Ross will slow down, actually. So Ross, no, he doesn't slow down. Crosses the line, 2 seconds remaining. So there will be one more lap after this one. Brendon Ross holds on, 32.4 for him. Foley pretty similar. Behind them, Termo. Right in Bolger's wheel tracks, but still he's not close enough either to make a move into turn 1. And Foley not quite close enough to Ross to turn 4. But they'll both have one more lap after this one to get it done. So we're a little bit conservative in turn 4. Looks like Bolger trying to double apex it. Looks like Bolger just a little bit quicker through there. Back at the lead though. The battle for the lead. Foley right behind Ross. Ooh, a little bit of a lock up there. Almost sounded like he locked the rears as well. He's right behind Ross. Got a decent exit out of the chicane. He will be close enough for a dive into the final corner. Ross goes defensive. 16 in the middle of the road, then moves back. Foley backs out of it. Bit of gamesmanship between the two. Once again, Foley using all the revs and hitting the limiter. He did do that on his qualifying lap. Behind them, a little bit of a lock-up from Steve Bolger into the final turn. But he's got a little bit of a gap over Termo. So barring mistake, he should hold on. But for the lead, Foley's right there. Ross goes a little bit defensive and it sort of balks Foley a little bit. But Foley is right there. Ross is going to have to go defensive in the approach to turn 4. He's already placed his car there. Foley going to try and go around the outside. It's not going to be possible. Corner is too long. He's going to try the switchback now. He's going to have to try it once again and just send it into Bicker to Padawilli. No, Ross plants himself in the middle of the road and then sort of slows down a little bit. Then outbrakes himself though, giving Foley an opportunity. But Ross on the power early. He's got a decent run into the chicane, so I don't think Foley's going to be close enough into the chicane, barring mistake. But his best shot is nailing the chicane and then getting Ross at the final corner. A little bit of contact there, so it's all about this exit now. He gets on the power early. A little bit of understeer though. And he shifted up too late. Ross immediately goes defensive. Can Foley get him on the switchback? It's going to be close. It looks like Foley's got a slightly better run. But he's used too many revs, I think. Didn't shift up early enough. And again, but Brendon Ross will hold on. And it will be an FCR Motorsport 1-2 in race 2. 1/10 of a second separating them. And Steve Bolger will take P3 in the end over Termo. Those two having a spirited battle in the end. Termo will be kicking himself after being in third for a majority of the race and then dropping it, or just making a mistake in the middle section, losing out to Bolger. Ricky Slick will take P5. And then we'll have cracker P6, Mike Coulston in P7. He put up a spirited battle early. Had a fantastic battle with, I believe it was Termo and Bolger there for a couple laps. But he'll take 7th. Brownie will finish in P8. And we'll have Glenn Miles in P9. Setting just by a 10th.5, set a 10th.5 fast personal best over Brian Walsh. So Glenn Miles 9th. Brian Walsh will finish 10th. Wayne Whitmore, after getting a puncture, which we didn't pick up on camera, he was up there early, but had an incident which dropped him down, and then obviously we saw that he got a puncture, which dropped him down the field, and then got 2 speeding in the pit lane penalties, which dropped him down the field, and that is why he was a lap down, which is unfortunate for him, because I think he would have made it an interesting race as well towards the end. But I've had 2 pretty exciting races to start the season, with both races coming down to the final lap, both for the lead and for the podium places. And that's something that we do hope continues throughout the season. But I've had this time in race 2, Brendon Ross just hold on over Brenton Foley, who did look like he was saving his tyres early on in that race. It then started battling towards the end, had the lead for a moment, but didn't hold it for too long as Ross got him back about a lap later. Steve Bolger nicking it from Termo, after Termo holding on P3 for a large majority of race 2 there, but yeah, just an error or a couple errors letting Steve Bolger get close and then get by. Ricky Slick, after contact early on, obviously dropped back down to, I think it was 10th place, moving up to 5th in the end. But yeah, pretty good night racing. Not the biggest field, but some good racing up and down the field. And well, we have been joined by a number of the drivers, and it being the Touring Car Series where we do interviews. Might as well kick it over to Brenton Foley. Obviously, Foley set a fantastic qualifying lap. You're leading every lap of the first race there, but it looked like towards the end your tyres sort of fell away a little bit, and on the last lap you lost out to Wayne Whitmore.
Yeah, I was kind of watching the gap the whole time that first race. My tyres, yeah, absolutely hit a wall in the last few laps. I fixed it for race 2. I took a little bit of a camber off. I think it might have been running a bit too much, but yeah, the fronts just weren't turning at all towards the end of race 1. But yeah, race 2 went a lot better.
Yeah, we did see towards the end of that first race there. There's a couple of corners where you're putting the steering lock in and your car wasn't going anywhere. I think there was one in particular, the last corner, where you just pretty much almost ran off the road, which unfortunately cost you the win. But still, it's a much better start than what it was last season in season 2. And then in that second race, it looked like for a large portion of, obviously once you battled your way through the field and it was just you and Rossi battling away, it looked like you were just hanging back and letting Rossi set the pace and you were taking care of your tyres. And then with about 5 minutes to go, you decided that that was the time to strike.
Yeah, we were chatting to each other during the race in the FCR pit, but we pretty much decided that there's no point in battling each other so early on because all we'll lose is time to the rest of them. So we just decided to kind of keep it clean amongst ourselves and make a gap so we could have a bit of a battle and a lot of fun later, which it was an awesome battle towards the end.
It certainly was. Obviously, you did take the lead there for about half a lap there, but you just couldn't quite hold on.
Yeah, he'd slide it through turn 1 every lap except for the last couple where I really needed him to. But no, he drove really well. Yeah, I just could not find a gap to get my nose into in those last 2 laps. Drove really well, but it was a lot of fun. Good start for the team.
So certainly, well, certainly for you, a fantastic start to the season, first and second, and great racing in both races. So well done.
Thanks very much.
All right, so we might as well cut to our race 2 winner, Rossi. Obviously, race 1 didn't quite go to plan. Where I can't remember exactly where you finished, but I think it was 4th or 5th, where you did drop down through the field. You battled your way back up again. But race 2, you pretty much immediately into the lead, about half a lap or 3/4 way through the lap, and then you were in the lead, and then just as pretty much as we said to Foley, just until the last 5 minutes in the lead, building a lead on everyone else around you, and then it was go time.
Yep, pretty much. Said it all for me, but yeah, just sort of recount. Yeah, race 1 didn't really go to plan with a bit of contact with Termo, but all good there. Probably a bit of confidence to race 2 that the car was able to have the pace throughout the whole lap. So yeah, come race 2, just echoing what Brenton said, we both held out for the first 15 odd minutes, and just managed to get myself in the lead, but sort of need to work on tyre management there because like Brenton said, my tyres were sliding over the place. So probably just lucky that had a little bit left at the end to keep it in front of him.
Certainly. Well, I'm just sort of harp back to last season. I'm just curious. Did you use a setup that you used at this circuit last season, or was this a completely new setup that you went to? Obviously, being part of a new team now.
99% of it is pretty much what we made at pista break. So it was probably the only setup that I had last year that was confident on, and I wished to carry that throughout all last year. But pretty much other than one click up on the rear bar, it was all from last season.
You did start the season off last season very well, but your results after that, yeah, weren't the greatest. But you'll be hoping now, being part of a new team, that you'll be able to carry this form at least through the first couple rounds to give yourself a chance at the title.
Yeah, hopefully that's the plan, mainly to sort of come in, help Foley and Ricky Slick with the team's championship and just see how it goes there.
Certainly. Well done on your race 2 victory, and good luck.
Thank you.
Alright, so we'll have a couple more interviews. Obviously, we'll go to our race 1 winner in Wayne Whitmore. Obviously, Wayne, you didn't have a great qualifying session. You couldn't quite match what you set in practice, but you're able to pick your way through the field slowly, and then you did have, I think it was an 8 or 9 second gap, or to that effect anyway between yourself and Foley, and you're sort of edging it down. But did you think you were actually going to get close enough to battle with Brenton for the lead in that first race?
No, I didn't. I didn't think I was going to get anywhere near to catch him, and then it was quite surprised when I caught him up. His tyres must have went off or something.
Yeah, certainly he was struggling with those fronts towards the end, and then obviously you got close enough, and you just were able to nip in front right when it mattered on that last lap.
Yeah, he got a good pass on. I was happy with the move.
And well, it's a good start for you for the season, even though it didn't have the greatest qualifying effort. But unfortunately for you, it didn't last too long with the second race there. You did manage to get yourself up there, I believe, into the top 5 before, I think, going off the road. But we missed what happened where you dropped down the field, I think the second time in that second race, where we found out that we saw that you had a puncture. Could you talk us through what happened there? Like, how'd you manage to give yourself a puncture?
I'm not sure where the puncture come from. I think it must have been. I was just going to have a look see if there's any contact when I went off the road. Not sure, but I ended up with the puncture somewhere growing through there. But then I had a pit lane speed limiter penalty that I couldn't clear. I ended up going through 3 times to get the penalty.
Yeah, we did pick that up on camera. I think it's caught people out. I think every season where people have had damage in the It's Goiania. The pit lane entry is actually right at the start where the cones are, and we did pick you up where the first time it looked like you went speeding through a little bit too quickly, and then we watched the second time, and unfortunately you did it again. So I think for next time you come around to this circuit, those cones at the start, they're the pit entry line. But still, you're able to finish the second race, albeit last. But with that, you still pick up points, so you're still giving yourself a solid start to the championship.
And looking for the team points. Got to get as many team points as we can.
Well, certainly with obviously both drivers. Well, there's no retirements tonight, which I think that's a first for the series. So team points, you guys should be looking okay with that victory, and I think Coulston being in the midfield in both races as well.
Yeah, happy for a good team start.
Well, good luck, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed your racing tonight.
Yeah, it was very good racing.
All right, so I think we'll go one more interview with the Southern sensation himself in Ricky Slick. So Ricky couldn't quite nab a victory, but you held on to the podium in the end in that first race, but not without having a very spirited battle between yourself and Steve Bolger at the end there.
Boy, I gotta tell you, by the end of that race, my tires were looking like a goddamn crackhead sitting outside of a 7-Eleven.
Well, that certainly seems to be the sentiment among all the FCR drivers actually. All struggling towards the end of the race. You did drop down behind Coulston, or not Coulston, behind Bolger for a lap or so, but you managed to get him back. Would you talk us through it?
Boy, you just gotta apply the blowtorch to these boys and they tend to go off the road.
Well, you certainly did. Ran wide at the final corner and you nipped back. That second race didn't quite go to plan, but you're still able to nab a fairly solid result there. Talk us through your second race.
You ever get on a mushroom trip outside a police station?
Can't say I have.
You just gotta shit your britches and run, and that's how these boys was driving tonight.
Fair enough. Well, Ricky, thanks for coming along, and obviously solid start for you as well in the championship, and FCR looking fairly handy as well. So good luck for the rest of the season.
Hey, you stay chipping now, boy.
I'll certainly try. All right. Well, that just about brings us to the end of tonight's broadcast. But just to go over just what's coming up at touring at Automobilista Australia. Automobilista Australia. On Wednesday nights, I do believe we have the TCAC series from Barber. I do believe there is a broadcast for that. I do believe Not Nether, but Nether's organising it, but we do have a bunch of new commentators for that one, so that's one to look out for on Wednesday. We don't have anything on Thursday off the top of my head, but on Sunday nights we do have the GT3 series from Abu Dhabi, and that will be a very interesting one under lights. And then next Monday we have the F3 Development Series from Montreal, and that will be handled by myself. The Sunday night series will be handled by Nether, and I believe Thursday will be handled by Nether, but commentated by a couple of his friends. Anyway, thanks for joining us this evening, and take it easy out there.